Привет, друзья. It's 2K away. Well, it's 2K away. I'm Peyton, this is Paige, and we talk about murder and weird shit. So today is a Peyton week, and so since the cases have been a little heavier, the Icebox murders wasn't quite as heavy. It was more conspiracy. Obviously, the murders were quite brutal.
Horrendous.
Yes. So I decided to do something a little bit different this week. It's going to be more rooted in the history books than anything else.
So I'm going to go to sleep.
No. I make it interesting, so therefore you won't. Trust me, we'll be fine. So today, we are going to be talking about Grigori Yefimovich Rasputin. So some of you may know him as his little nickname is the Mad Monk. He's not a killer, he's not a serial killer of any sorts, but he was murdered. So we're going to be chatting about him today.
So that's why we're interested in him.
Yes. No other reason.
We talk about murder.
Yes. And he had such an interesting life, and with Rasputin, I'll go ahead and I'll just say this right now. A lot of what was rumored about his life is most likely not true. So with him, he was a very larger than life kind of person, and a lot of the nobles that ended up hating him and murdering him, little spoiler alert for you, but a lot of the people that despised him and wanted his power and influence to be like much smaller than what it was are the ones that started all these crazy rumors. And with the nobles starting these rumors, it became fact, unfortunately. So
yeah, that's what happens.
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of what you may hear, a lot of like the crazy shit, which I'll get into, that you hear about his life really wasn't the case. Also, if you hear little squeaks and stuff, I'm really sorry. My guinea pigs are really loud. And unfortunately, my desk is right next to their cage. So,
little pigs.
I know. So, as far as early life, I know that he was born sometime in January in 1896. There's some debate on exactly like the dates, because with this case in particular, I'm taking it bad like it's a particular murder case, but this is just history, unfortunately. Wow. Okay. But with this, a lot of the dates are close but not exact in like every source that I found, because there was like an old calendar, like the old Julian calendar, and then compared to the new, I think it's the Gregorian calendar, dates are different. So I'm going to give like a general of this is probably when it was. So
interesting.
So he was born sometime in January of 1896 in...
Let's just say the 29th, since it's my birthday.
Okay. So he was born on January 29th of 1896. It was actually early January, but that's okay.
Whatever.
Most likely in early January. But he was born on the 29th, Paige's birthday, because they definitely knew that in 1867 or 69, excuse me. So in Pokrovskoy, which is in Siberian Russia. The specific place, I'm not going to say, because it's Pokrovskoy and then it's like something else, but I didn't exactly know how to pronounce those, and I don't want to offend our Russian listeners. So his father's name was Yefim, and his mother's name was Anna Parshakova. Excuse me. His parents had 7 other children that all died in infancy. So Rasputin, Rasputin was the only one that survived. But this is Siberian Russia. They are fighting weather and trying to stay alive.
Yeah.
And most of them are farmers too. So, I mean, like in the olden days, you had 20 kids. Some died, and then the other ones would help you farm. That was just life for a
Yeah.
lot of countries, honestly. Not a ton is known about his childhood because it's Siberia in the 1860s. So, except for the crazy rumors that spread when he rose to fame, but historians have all come to the agreement that, like most Siberian peasants, Rasputin was not formally educated and most likely didn't even learn how to read until, like, probably adulthood.
Hmm.
They know he was rather unruly. He was a rather unruly youth.
Ah.
He was, he drank, some petty theft,
Oh.
disrespect towards authority, you
Oh.
know, just one of those, like,
Little shitheads.
yeah, basically. So he always had like this aura about him. Again, like a larger than life kind of character. And from a young age, people thought that he had like mystic powers. He could calm
Wow.
wild horses. Well, of 8 children, he was the only one to survive. So they already thought that that was a miracle, which
Right.
kind of was.
Well, yeah.
So he could calm wild horses, and people said that he had like a second sight. And apparently there was like one time where he had like a really bad fever, and in his like fever dreams he claimed to see a beautiful woman, and then like a priest or a holy man was like concluded that that was in fact the Virgin Mary. You know.
Oh. No, that was a fever dream and he was hallucinating.
Yes. So I think part of Rasputin's personality and his legend definitely stemmed from the fact that he had people, even from a young age, telling him that he was special and that he was basically like magical and from God.
Uh,
So that's just kind of that's how he viewed himself even. Not
right.
that that's necessarily a bad thing, but we'll continue. So in 1886, possibly 1887, he met a peasant girl named Praskovia Dubrovina. Sorry. And the next year, they got married. Rasputin was around 18 or 19 at the time when he
Oh,
got married. That was just, what you did.
sure.
They stayed married all the way until his eventual death. So they
Oh.
were married for many years. Altogether, they had 7 children, but only 3 of them survived till adulthood.
Oh.
Maria, Dmitri, and Vivara. 2 girls and a boy.
Mm-hmm.
So in 1897, around about, Rasputin became very more interested in religion, and he actually left Pokrovskoy to go on a pilgrimage. This was
All right.
his thing.
Oh.
No one knows the exact reason why he left. There were some speculation that it was probably one of 3 reasons. People speculated that he was inspired by other theological figures, that he had another vision of the Virgin Mary, which he was said to have visions of the Virgin Mary several times throughout his lifetime.
Mm.
And some even said that he was running away from punishment for stealing a horse.
Oh. I mean, yeah,
But no
could be.
matter the reason, I mean,
He left.
you could be like, shit, I'm gonna get arrested. Oh, the Virgin Mary came to me, and she said, you know. So, no matter what the reason, if it was religion, inspiration, or Grand Theft Horse, he left. So
You're proud of yourself for that.
I really was. So one of his first pilgrimages, he visited other monasteries and holy men and whatnot, and he eventually ended up at the Saint Nicholas Monastery at Ver. I'm so sorry, I'm gonna butcher this. And I was just bragging about how I was decent at Russian
You were.
pronunciations. It's Verkotie.
It
That sounds
probably
fine.
isn't
It's
how
probably
you
not.
pronounce it.
The thing, I think I've actually heard it be pronounced before, but I don't remember. I'm sorry, Russia. Just to the whole country of Russia, I'm sorry.
The entire very large
All of Russia.
Yeah.
Anything that we do in a different country, I'm just going to apologize to the whole country first. At the beginning of every episode, just I'm sorry, Russia. So, He met elders there that he would greatly respect in this monastery, and it's said that he most likely learned how to read and write at the monastery. But he ended up not liking the restrictive life of a monk, so he returned
Yeah.
to Pokrovskoy, supposedly a changed man. His beard and his hair was longer, looking more disheveled than before. Like it was like long and scraggly.
Ugh.
Um, well, also, I mean, like he did go wandering. He was a religious wanderer in quotes, and he did wander a little bit before he even got to this monastery. So he probably looked a little ragged by the time he got to this one.
A little disheveled.
Probably. It was said that he became a vegetarian, swore off alcohol, and actually prayed and sang much more than he had in the past because,
Oh.
now he's a holy man. But he never actually went through the process to become an actual, I don't know if it's a license monk. you know, it's like going through the classes, but not actually taking the test to become one kind of thing. So
Gotcha.
he was a holy man, just not official, if that makes any sense.
Okay.
So he spent years after he initially returned to Pokrovskoy as a religious wanderer, or stanik, as they're called, and would leave home for months and even years at a time to wander the country and visit holy sites. And it was even said that he made it as far as Mount Athos in Greece. So he was
Oh,
all
wow.
over. Yeah. So there's multiple sources that say that he possibly even went to Greece as far.
Holy crap.
Yeah. So, and he did this by foot.
Well, I would imagine if it was, back in the 1800s, unless he
And
stole
I
another
mean, he
horse.
was unless he committed grand theft horse again. Yeah. Plus, I mean, like he's a peasant farmer. Like he's not buying cars. So by the early 1900s, Rasputin had a following of family members and villagers. He ended up making a makeshift chapel and would hold like secret prayer meetings. And this ended up pissing off local village priests and some villagers,
Yeah, I bet it did.
of course. So around this time, a rumor spread that Rasputin was a member of a religious sect known as, I think it's pronounced the Kleist or Kleisty, something of that nature. I've heard it
Okay.
both ways. I'm going to say Kleisty. The Kleisty believed that salvation could be attained only by total repentance, and it was much easier for those who had truly transgressed. So, sin in order that you may obtain forgiveness. So, instead of like going about their lives and if you accidentally sin and you confess, no, they would purposefully sin so they could repent even harder after sinning. So, how they would do this?
What?
They would self-flagellate and have large orgies to achieve this. So you sin and then then you repent.
Oh my.
Yes.
Wow, that's intense.
Yeah. So while there were many rumors about this, many historians and family members of Rasputin's have discounted the rumors. They're like he may have like flirted with the idea, but they don't think that he was actually a part of that. So, again, a very common theme in Rasputin's life. He had this magnetic charisma and a larger than life character, and people, you know, once he started pissing people off, that's when these crazy rumors kind of started.
Man.
Essentially, yeah. So not like a great thing to be
No.
known for.
I mean,
Yeah. So
I mean.
craziness. Yeah. But can I be completely honest and say, like, I don't exactly hate that? Let's sin so then we can ask for forgiveness. I don't
just don't
know if I don't like the self-flagellation. The large orgies could have been fun, but good God.
I mean, that's a lot of work.
It
But
is.
like, okay, why? What? You really want to repent that bad so that you're going to go sin and do something you're not supposed to just so you can repent? That's confusing to me.
Well, like, okay, think of it in regular like religion. Like if you're a devout Catholic or something. If you sin, you go to the priest and you ask for forgiveness, and
And
he's
you
like
confess
he's
and all of
like
that. Yeah.
I'm not a Catholic, so I don't exactly know what they tell you, but they're like, oh, repent and do couple Hail Marys. I don't know. I'm not the
Okay,
person to ask,
yes.
but
But
they would just be like, you know what? We're just gonna go straight to sinning so we can repent even harder, because you're gonna get true forgiveness if you're really, really sinning.
just it just doesn't make sense to me.
That's, hey,
I can't wrap my little mind around that. I don't understand.
this is what they did.
Okay.
Who am I to judge?
Okay.
Who am I to judge how you seek
Sin.
forgiveness, you know? Or sin, that too.
I mean,
So, moving on.
yeah.
So, word of Rasputin's healing capabilities and charisma spread through Siberia in the early 1900s. So, around 1904, I've heard several dates, again, not sure, but around this time, he traveled to the city of Kazan, where he would help people resolve spiritual crises and help with like anxieties and stuff.
Oh, good for him.
So, through this time, his following grew even larger. And there were rumors going around that he was having sex with his female followers.
Ah, naturally.
Yeah, they would say like, oh, he would be like having sex in public with anyone,
Because
that sort of thing.
he has to sin so that he can repent.
That's if he was a part of the Clisti. So, but despite all of that, he made a good impression on local holy men in the area of Kazan, as well as local church officials, who gave him a letter of recommendation to a Bishop Sergei, the rector of the St. Petersburg Theological Seminary at the Alexander Nevsky Monastery. So Rasputin went to St. Petersburg.
Oh.
So when he got to St. Petersburg, he made friends and acquaintances with influential clergymen who would introduce him to aristocrats. He would go to salons, which is what they were called, where they would gather for religious discussions, and Rasputin was able to gain more followers this way. So now noblemen and women were noticing him.
Mm-hmm.
His ideas and, in quotes, strange manners made him very appealing towards St. Petersburg elite, because according to this historian named Joseph Furman, they were bored, cynical, and seeking new experiences. Also at this time, they were very into spiritualism and the occult, which this kind of like spiritualism and like fascination with the occult was definitely like making its way around the world again as like more of like a popular topic of like discussion, I guess. Like it showed in everywhere. And he was a native Russian, which previous holy men in St. Petersburg apparently weren't.
Oh.
So that is another reason why he was so appealing. He was just this very eccentric guy, but I don't know if you've seen a picture of him. He's quite terrifying. So he is. There's some pictures where he looks like this like old man, this small old man, where it's like, oh, he could be precious. And then there's some where he's looking directly at the camera and he looks like straight out of the Lord of the Rings.
Now I have to look him up, Rasputin.
Look him up real quick.
Oh, where do you get sweet old man out of in some of his stuff? Because
there's like one particular picture where he's sitting at a table and he's writing.
Ooh, he's scary.
We'll discuss it later, because I'm going to be showing you some pictures after we record.
Okay.
Yeah, like I said, he looks straight out of like Lord of the Rings.
Ugh.
And he was known to have, again, this like amazing charisma and sexual prowess. We'll get to it. So by 1905, he had formed friendships with members of the aristocracy, and that would eventually introduce him to the Tsar Nicholas Romanov II, his wife, Tsarina Alexandra Fedorovna, I think, and their children. They had 4 girls and a little boy. I don't know the girl's name, but the boy is very pertinent. So there is discussions on when exactly Rasputin was introduced to the Tsar and Tsarina. Some say it was sometime in 1905, some say 1906, either way. He was introduced to the royal family as a holy man, like a religious healer, because
Mm-hmm.
that's how he was known.
Right.
Rasputin apparently addressed Tsar Nicholas informally and even called him Batushka, which means little father.
Uh,
He was
oh,
an eccentric guy. Yeah.
okay.
So Alexandra, though, was very religious, and their son Alexei, which was the youngest, the only heir to the throne, suffered from hemophilia.
Mm.
So, hemophilia is a hereditary condition which is often caused by inbreeding, which the
Well,
royals of the world,
right. That's what they
especially
did.
at that time, yeah, where the blood's ability to clot is a much slower process, so you could very easily bleed to death from like a bruise or a
Mm-hmm.
scratch or
Mm-hmm.
anything of that nature. So Rasputin quickly became Alexei's healer. He was already well known as a faith healer around St. Petersburg, but Rasputin was kind of the czar's like last ditch effort in trying to heal his son, because whatever the doctors seemed to be doing was making it worse.
Mm.
And the first time that he called Rasputin in, he was able to pray and do his little ritual, and then Alexei ended up being fine. So then it was like, then every time they would call for him again.
Right.
So he would somehow ease the pain that Alexei was feeling, and the bleeding would stop. So according to some historians, Rasputin stopped doctors from giving Alexei aspirin, which is a blood thinner, which you
Oh,
definitely shouldn't
oh,
give to someone
no,
who has a
no,
bleeding disorder.
no, no,
Yeah.
no.
So I saw that and I was like, are you fucking, what medical school did you go to? You
Oh my
idiots.
gosh.
Yeah.
Well, of course he was going to continue to bleed if you're giving him aspirin. Oh my goodness.
Oh yeah, for sure. So
Poor little thing.
there's a lot of because whatever Rasputin did, it worked every time. And I'll
Mm-hmm.
I'll even like talk about Rasputin had this, it was much more of like a hands-off approach to anytime that Alexei actually was really sick. He had much more of a hands-off approach. It was like rest, relaxation, and then again, everything that the doctors were doing seemed to be making it worse if they were actually giving him aspirin. But it was
Then,
much more of
yeah.
a, it was much more hands-on, and I think one of the things that definitely contributed to the fact that Rasputin was like such a healer or whatever, his
Mm-hmm.
hands-off approach, and he was such like a calming presence to the family and to Alexandra, and he had all this charisma. I don't know. I never met him, so I don't really know his methods. But if you need to stop somebody from bleeding to death, an elevated heart rate is definitely not a good thing.
No.
So my theory is whatever the doctors were doing were making Alexei nervous. It was
Nervous.
making
Yeah.
Alexandra nervous. It was already a very stressful situation. And Rasputin had a much more hands-off rest, relaxation, have your
Mm-hmm.
heart rate as slow as it can possibly be so the blood can have time to clot sort of thing.
Right.
So I think whatever he did, it was working for
Yeah.
him, for the family, for Alexei. So there's a story of in 1812 actually Alexei had a hemorrhage in his thigh.
Wait. 1812 or 1912?
19. Did I
You
say
said
18?
you said 18.
So in 1912, apparently Alexei had a hemorrhage in his thigh, and Rasputin was in Siberia at the time. So
Mm.
Alexandra sent him a telegram asking him to pray for Alexei. So Rasputin's reply was basically like, "Don't worry, he's not gonna die. He'll be fine. Just don't let the doctors bother him too much."
Right.
Was basically his reply. And it was actually kind of cute. He said the little one will be all right, like in his like actual letter, like calling Alexei the
Mm-hmm.
little one.
Yeah.
And apparently like the kids loved him. So
Gosh, I don't know how. He's scary
I know
looking.
he's really
He
scary.
probably would have freaked me out as a kid.
Probably. So Alexei healed and the doctors were stunned.
Naturally.
It is shocking that Alexei was healed with such a serious injury, and apparently the cause of his recovery isn't actually known.
Hmm.
People have speculated that Alexei needed all of the rest and relaxation that he could get, and just by getting the reassurance from Rasputin, Alexandra was able to be at ease, and everyone was able to be much calmer in a highly stressful situation. So Alexandra believed that Rasputin had performed a miracle, and therefore he was essential to Alexei's survival.
Right.
So this is what I mean about, like, he had a very hands-off approach. He was like as much rest as possible. He was very intelligent, Rasputin was.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever he was doing was good. Whatever the doctors were doing was not. So Alexandra was like, okay, he's staying.
Right.
So he became an indispensable member of the royal entourage. Alexandra grew very attached to Rasputin. And of course, later on, there were rumors of the two of them having some sort of affair.
Mm-hmm.
But in Rasputin's life, as I've said before, rumors become fact. So I think Alexandra just saw him as, I don't want to say a father figure,
Mm-hmm.
but she saw him as like he was a man God had sent to heal her son. Like,
Yeah.
he was a savior in her eyes. That made them very close. Her seeing him as like her son's savior,
Yeah.
obviously she becomes close to him. And I think that he also kind of played like a psychologist as well, because he was very, very pertinent to Alexandra's mental health,
Right.
because she was already under a great deal of pressure, because
Well,
she
yeah.
she was German. She came from Germany to marry Nicholas. Now, don't get me wrong, this is right before World War One, but you know,
Hmm.
she was German and she had already given birth to 4 daughters. And of course, back then, still, it was very much you need a male heir. She'd already
Right.
given birth to 4 daughters, so she was getting tremendous pressure from everyone in Russia and all the nobles and everything that she needed to have a son.
And
And then,
clearly it's her fault, obviously.
right, that she has daughters.
Right. Right.
So, and then finally, she has a son and he's critically ill, which I think hemophilia is actually transferred through the mom too. So
Oh.
that's like another thing. Women can get hemophilia, but it's mainly males are mainly affected by it,
Mm.
apparently. The royal family's belief that Rasputin had all these healing powers brought Rasputin power and status. So he had regular access to the palace and the royal family.
Yeah.
So he definitely used his newfound position to the fullest.
Yeah.
He definitely did like having influence and power.
Well, sure.
Apparently he was accepting bribes,
Oh, well,
possibly. I'm not sure.
as
But
one
he
does.
but he was accepting sexual favors. And he was working diligently to expand his influence. Because that's what you do. So women were very drawn to him.
I don't understand.
Well, you didn't meet him, so you don't know.
But he's scary looking.
So it was said that the noble women of St. Petersburg would beg his maidservants for his sweat-soaked underwear.
Excuse me while I go vomit.
Yes. I don't care how hot you are or how attractive people think you are. I don't want your dirty fucking underwear. Don't care.
No. Ew.
Hey, you know what? That's some people's thing. Some people like dirty undies.
Yeah.
So,
And
yeah,
it's not mine.
right. So, and it was also said that some of them would actually follow him back on his trips to Siberia. I don't exactly know if they made it to his house where his wife was. I'm not sure.
Oh,
Because
was his
remember,
wife never with him?
no, his wife and his children stayed in Siberia
Oh,
in
shit.
Prokofskoy. They never came with
Oh.
him. No, no. He was by himself. He was a religious wanderer. He did this by himself.
Oh.
Uh-huh. So,
Okay.
yeah, other people, he never had to chase women. People would bring him women. People brought him girls, women, wives. The men who would want to be in his favor because he was close to the royal family and just the person that he was, they would offer him their wives, like you do.
Oh. Oh.
So, of course, with this comes controversy,
Yeah.
and he became quite the controversial figure. He was accused by his enemies of religious heresy, rape, and was suspected of exerting undue political influence over the Tsar. And like I said before, was rumored to be having an affair with the Tsarina.
I mean, I can see where people would be thinking that.
Which part?
All of it.
Yeah. There was
Yeah.
apparently a woman that did come forward. This was the only woman that I knew about that came forward and claimed that she was raped by him, but nothing ever came out of that because I don't exactly know, and I never ever would want to say that someone who comes forward and has the claim that they've been, sexually assaulted. I never ever want to say I don't believe that person, but I think she kind of came from a noble family that didn't like him already.
Mm.
But I didn't really look into it farther because anyone else didn't. No one else came forward to say that Rasputin had sexually assaulted them. Everybody seemed more than happy to,
Ugh. But
engage with him, I
uh,
should say. Hey,
uh,
man.
okay.
So even the local clergy in Pokrovskoy, uh, you know, the people that he'd been pissing off for years in his hometown, denounced Rasputin as a heretic and launched an inquest into his activities.
Oh.
And even Russian politicians and the secret police in St. Petersburg were investigating him. I guess they went to the Tsar about him, but had no luck in getting rid of him because they wanted to either get him like exiled from St. Petersburg, or I think they were wanting him to like stop practicing
Magic?
healing. I don't know. Yeah, practicing magic. But again, he was so vital in the Tsar and Tsarina's eyes that they were like, you know what? We don't care what he does in his off time. He's
As long
keeping
as
our
he
he's keeping our
saves her,
son alive. Yeah.
right?
Now we're kind of moving into Russia's decline because it
Okay.
did. And there was a revolution. Just open up a history book. So
I don't want to.
World War One. You know what? I'll just give you the lesson. It'll be fine. World
Okay.
War Shh, it's fine. So World War One, the seemingly feudal system of life that was crumbling by the second, and government bureaucracy were all contributing to Russia's rapid economic decline. So what I mean by feudal system is very much like that's a medieval kind of government. Is you have like the very clear, like you have the serfs and then you have the lords. You have that very clear separation of like servants and masters, I guess, technically. So,
Mhm.
and that's kind of the way it was in Russia. So Russia was basically made up of nobles and peasants at the
Mhm.
time. So the Tsar and Tsarina saw Rasputin as an example of the rural areas and the people living in those areas, but that just wasn't the case. He was a very different example of a rural peasant, honestly. Aristocrats would spend their time doing business, yes, but also throwing like lavish parties and kind of spending a little frivolously and never really stepping out into the real Russia, which was full of famine, filth, overworked citizens, deplorable living conditions,
Yeah.
poverty, death.
Mhm.
It reminds me very, very much of France before the French Revolution, where you had
Yeah.
like Louis and Marie Antoinette in Versailles in their ivory tower, and then the rest of France was kind of just starving, essentially. That's kind
Right.
of what it reminds me of a little bit. So the royal family themselves didn't leave the palace life often, even though it was known that Nicholas and Alexandra didn't like the responsibilities that royalty came with. Nicholas even said that he knew nothing about the affairs of the state and never wanted to be the czar. He was
Not
only
something you would want to hear from your czar.
No, I mean he was only 26 when he actually became the czar. So he
Oh,
was and at the time, I mean Russia was already in a not great place
right.
economically and socially. So he kind of inherited this like growing shitstorm of unpleasantness
Yeah, and
that
if
he
you
was kind of
already
forced into.
don't know anything about making it better or even
No, and I mean like
continuing what you have,
yeah, I
then
mean like
yeah.
he watched his father rule, and I guess he was just kind of trying to emanate that because he's like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like
Right.
like I'm sorry, but at 26, I couldn't imagine governing an area as big as Russia with like almost 200 million people that I have to like take care of. Fuck that, man. I want
No.
none of that noise.
No.
Absolutely not. I barely, you know what? I have my two pigs and me, and that's all I can do.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he and Alexandra, like, they wanted a simpler life. They liked the idea of having like a little farm to themselves and just living out their life like that sort of thing. They liked that. And then Rasputin comes in being this eccentric character. So they thought this was what the rest of Russia was like. Not the case.
No.
Um, they were very unaware of the world around them. They really were. World War
Wow.
One was like when they officially went into war. It was like the first time that the royal family and then the common people were actually brought together and united in a very long time. And then,
Yeah.
of course, like after all this happened, then of course they're no longer united. Then the revolution happens. It
Hmm.
happens. Shit happens. So while Nicholas was away at war, because he did go to the front lines to fight.
Oh, good on him.
Yeah. But while he was away at war, Alexandra was left to run the country, which
Oh.
she was ill prepared to do.
Yeah.
So she basically kind of adopted Rasputin as her right hand man when it comes to just making decisions as far as the state goes. And being that she was German, they were at war with Germany. Of
Uh,
course, a million different accusations come running. They accused her
naturally.
of, yeah, they accused her of being sympathetic. And they also said that like Rasputin was really leading her astray and that he was like the real puppet master and he was like doing all this shit. Like, there's an artist representation of like a very large Rasputin with like a Tsar Nicholas and an Alexandra just like sitting on his knees, like marionettes kind of style.
Yeah.
I don't really think that was the case. I think he actually did care for the royal family. And I think it was just like, let's try and make the best of this situation. I could be wrong, but that's just kind of what it seemed like to me. Because again, like these were all rumors. It was never
Fact.
it's all like this crazy gray area of like some things we do know as fact, and then other things that we know as fact, probably not true. It's crazy.
Hmm.
So, because some of the nobles hated Rasputin, this peasant who had all this influence and power, especially with the royal family, which people think that he had like this like crazy amount of power. Yes, he did have power and influence because he knew the royal family, but it wasn't like he was like legit running things. He
Right.
would just be like the guy in Alexandra's ear helping her kind of thing.
Hmm.
So again, which is why people assumed that he was like telling her bad shit,
Yeah.
whatever.
I get it.
Yeah. Because these nobles hated Rasputin, they would be the ones that would spread a lot of these rumors about his life and activities. And they were kind of using him as a scapegoat for all of Russia's problems. So if the noble said it, it became fact.
Mm-hmm.
So if they said Rasputin was the reason for Russia's decline, then Rasputin was the reason for Russia's decline. Not the
Right.
nobles being idiots. It was
No,
Rasputin, obviously.
obviously.
Yes. So they said that, Rasputin is the reason for Russia's decline, when what was actually happening was that these nobles were losing their influence with the people of Russia, and they did not like the fact that Rasputin, a strange commoner, just swooped in and had all this influence.
Gained everybody's trust.
Exactly. So, in 1914, actually, a peasant woman, which I'm not even going to bother naming her because it's not really super relevant. So, she actually stabbed Rasputin
Oh shit.
outside of his home in Pokrovskoy in one of his trips back to Siberia.
Oh man.
He was very seriously wounded, as you would be, because it was like in the abdomen and it looked like he may not survive. But
Oh.
he ended up having surgery and spent like a small stint in a hospital. He did manage to recover. Um,
Wow.
there is some speculation behind this like assassination attempt, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So the woman was a follower of a priest who hated Rasputin,
Mm.
and this particular priest was actively trying to like drive a wedge between Rasputin and the royal family. The woman claimed that she acted alone because she said that she read about Rasputin in the newspapers and was convinced that he was the Antichrist. So she was found not to be responsible for her actions by reason of insanity.
Oh nice.
Yes. So while healing from the stab wound, so Rasputin made a lot of prophecies throughout the years, some of which actually did come true. And one of his big prophecies did come true, which is
Oh.
like another thing that like leads to like the mystique around Rasputin. Like this particular thing wasn't a rumor. This was actually something that he said and prophesized would happen. So he warned the Tsar Nicholas that Russia was in trouble. And he claimed that if he died, it meant the end of Russia, which happened. Which I actually, when I first read that, I was like, that's rather self-centered, Rasputin, but okay.
Right.
But he did prophesize that he would die before the 1st of January.
Before his birthday.
Yes. So he said that if one of the Tsar's relatives should be responsible for his death, that none of the family members or children will survive the next 2 years. The Russian people will kill them.
Oh.
And if you know anything about history,
I
this is
don't.
this is true. This prophecy comes true.
Oh my.
Yes. So, moving on. So, a group of nobles led by Prince Felix Yusupov, which included Grand Duke Dmitry Palovich and a politician named Vladimir Periskovich. I think there was a couple more people involved, but those were like the main players.
Mm-hmm.
They made the decision that Rasputin's influence threatened basically their entire existence, and that he had to be killed.
Oh.
So they hatched a plan to kill him in December of 1916 by luring him to the Yusupov's Moika palace. Now, I'm going to tell you Felix's account of the night,
Okay.
which is he told in his memoirs as well. And then I'm going to tell you what actually happened.
Okay.
Because Felix's account of the night of the murder led to some of the crazy rumors, the mystique that was Rasputin.
Mm.
It definitely like that story became fact. And not until people started actually like looking into it
Mm-hmm.
did people actually reveal that's clearly not what happened.
Ah.
So, Felix's account. He said that he invited Rasputin to his home shortly after midnight and led him to the basement. Felix offered Rasputin tea and cakes that had been laced with cyanide.
Mm.
Initially, he refused them, but eventually ate them. He kept eating them, but apparently the poison seemed to have no effect on him. Felix then gave Rasputin wine, also poisoned, and he drank several glasses, with still no effect.
Hmm.
So Felix then went upstairs where the other men were to grab a revolver. He went back down to the basement, said some shit to Rasputin that made him look cool in his
Sure.
later tale, and then shot him once in the chest. Again, this is all according to Felix.
Uh-huh.
Then they made a ruse where one of them dressed up as Rasputin to make it look like he returned to his St. Petersburg apartment, because he did have an apartment in St. Petersburg.
Mm-hmm.
So he said when they got back to the basement, though, Rasputin was not dead and leapt up and attacked Felix, and they shot him again. They beat him, and in, I believe it was Felix's account or one of the other men, said that one of them cut off his penis.
Why?
No reason. So they then wrapped his body in cloth, threw it in, and threw it into the Malaya Nevka River. And later, when his body was recovered, they claimed that water was found in his lungs. So he was magically still alive when they threw him into the river. And then finally, the cold water of a December river in Russia finally killed him. So that was Felix's account
Felix.
of what happened. And
Felix.
that's what became fact.
Felix. This what?
Now I'm going to tell you what really happened.
Okay.
So Felix was rumored to be having a relationship with Dmitri, one of the other conspirators. It was really funny. Felix was married to a niece of the Tsar, and Dmitri was a cousin of the Tsar. So it was the Tsar's family that killed him. Keep that in mind. And it's in December.
It's before January, before his birthday.
Yes. And then shortly after Rasputin was killed, the Tsar was overthrown, and the Romanov dynasty was ended. So crazy. Again, one of the many things that made Rasputin such a mysterious person, and that was actually true. So it's actually really funny. One of the documentaries that I watched, when they were talking about how Felix was rumored to be having a relationship with Dmitri, they said that at least 2 of the 3 men, like the main conspirators, were active homosexuals. And I was like, that's a really dumb way to put that.
Like they were very active.
No, because that suggests at one point that they're inactive homosexuals. I don't know. That just maybe I was like, okay.
Well, the active, that makes me think they are very active in their community.
They were really physically fit. They were really concerned with health.
Right.
So he invited Rasputin over to his home to meet his wife. I think her name was Irina. So when I heard that, I was kind of like, oh, he invited Rasputin over to meet his wife. Wink.
Gross.
Yeah. Because remember, people would offer Rasputin their wives. So he picked Rasputin up from his apartment. And here's the thing, that's my assumption. I think it's a pretty good assumption because it was after midnight when he picked Rasputin up.
Oh, goodness.
So I think my assumption is actually a pretty good assumption. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Because if Ryan was like, hey, so I'm going to bring this guy over to meet you, but it's going to be like 1 a.m. I'm like, excuse me?
You'd be like, are you fucking kidding me? I'm asleep.
I will be sleeping then.
Oh, I know. Yeah. So that's why I'm like, oh, yeah. He brought him over to meet his wife. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Meet the missus.
Yeah. So he picked Rasputin up from Rasputin's apartment in his car and drove to the Yusupov Palace. The events that took place in the palace once they arrived are not known.
Oh.
What is known for certain? There were no tea and cakes. Rasputin didn't even like sweets. He didn't like sugar, and his daughter
Oh.
Maria has always maintained that he never liked sugar.
Huh.
Historians are certain that Rasputin was tortured in the palace. They said that he may have been served like a soup with small amounts of something to knock him unconscious so he could be tied up and tortured.
Man.
He was then shot 3 times, one at close range, like right on his forehead. And I'll show you a
Oh.
picture because I have a picture. They pulled his body into Dmitri's car and took him to the Petrovsky Bridge over the Nevka River to throw him into the river. But it didn't go to plan. So it's December in Russia, and this winter was particularly a harsh one. So there was ice everywhere.
Yeah.
This river led to the Gulf of Finland. It would have been easier and possible to dispose of his body somewhere closer to the palace, but they wanted his body to completely disappear.
Mm-hmm.
And this place is perfect for that because even though it was cold, there were large holes in the ice, and his body would have, gone into the Gulf to never be seen again. But that night, though, there was a strong current in the wrong direction, which made the body flow in the opposite direction, not in the Gulf of Finland, and Rasputin's body got stuck in the ice.
Oh shit.
Yeah, so something interesting that I think is worth bringing up. So, there were rumors that the British may have been involved in the conspiracy to kill Rasputin. So,
Huh.
according to this theory, the British were concerned that Rasputin was urging Nicholas to make like separate peace treaties with Germany, which would let Germany concentrate its military efforts on the Western Front. So, I believe they were concerned that Germany would come closer to Britain, and they didn't want that. So, this theory has a lot of different variants, but it's very possible that they could have been involved. But the theory goes that Oswald Rayner, who was conducting the British involvement in the planning, supposedly, had attended Oxford University with Felix Yusupov. So they knew one another.
Oh.
Yes, and supposedly there was some British military in Russia and they fled the country right after the murder.
Interesting.
Supposedly. But this is just a theory.
Mm-hmm.
Some have discredited the theory. I think it's interesting,
Sure.
but we'll never know. So, news of Rasputin's murder spread even before his body was found. Apparently, Purishkevich, one of the conspirators, had a big mouth. So, an investigation was launched the next morning, and all 3 of them could not get their story straight. So 2 workmen noticed blood on the railing of the Petrovsky Bridge and found a boot on the ice below. So the police began searching the area.
Mm-hmm.
Rasputin's body was found under the river ice a couple days later, around, they said 200 meters downstream from where the bridge was where he was thrown.
Mm.
There was an autopsy conducted, but the initial report was supposedly lost.
Naturally.
But the examiner, a man named Dmitry Kosaratov, I think, later stated that Rasputin's body showed signs of severe trauma, which
Yeah.
which would lend credence to the fact that people think that he was probably tortured, which
Right.
very likely, and had 3 gunshot wounds, like we said,
Mm-hmm.
one at close range to the forehead. So it was like kind of execution style.
Yeah.
There was a slice wound on his left side. I'm assuming this is a knife wound, but the term that I found was slice. So I think maybe he was cut. I'm not sure if it was with a knife or if it was, or it may have been from the ice where he was thrown.
Oh.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
and he had many other injuries, and many of which the medical examiner said that they were post-mortem injuries. So from falling into the
Wow.
ice, from him traveling in the river, a lot
Right.
could have happened in that time. Plus, I mean, like it was a couple days
Right.
before they found him. So
Mm-hmm.
a lot of it could have been explained. A single bullet was found in Rasputin's body, but it was too badly deformed and of a type that was too widely used to trace, unfortunately.
Mm.
So Kosaratov, the medical examiner, said that he found no evidence that he had been poisoned and no evidence that he ate any sweets before his death, which again lends credence to the fact that Felix Yusupov is just spinning bullshit.
Right.
So no water was found in his lungs, so he was already dead when they threw him in
Right.
the river. And Kosaratov did find his genitals intact. So they didn't cut him off. So
Why
it's
why would you just add that to a story?
well, look at the story that they spun. Why not
Yeah,
cut
I
off his
know.
penis at the end?
I know, but that of all things to add
I don't know, man.
to it.
I don't know. I don't know.
I'm confused on a lot of this whole story.
Yeah. So apparently Dmitri didn't apparently know that they planned on killing Rasputin. I think he knew that they were going to torture Rasputin. I'm not sure if he knew about the killing. Either
Hmm.
way, he was involved,
Yeah.
but who knows? So when Nicholas found out that it was members of his family that were the murderers, they were all punished, but they got very mild punishments.
Jeez.
So this was done in secret because it would be very, very bad if it were found out that they got such mild punishments and that they were the ones responsible for Rasputin's death.
Right?
Because people at this time were already uprising. There was already
Yeah.
major issues. So Felix Yusupov was sentenced to house arrest on a family estate, and Grand Duke Dmitri was posted to Persia with the military. I don't know what happened to Perishkovich. I'm not sure what
Hmm.
happened to him. But with the revolution pretty much underway, it actually saved their lives because they both eventually immigrated to Paris, where Felix's bullshit story, of course, fueled the fire of the myth that was Rasputin. Because
Right.
again, that became fact for a very long time. So Rasputin was buried at the beginning of January, and because it wasn't very long after his body was found, and laid to rest in the park at Sarkoye Selo. I don't know. I'm sorry, Russia. Upon Alexandra's request, who was shattered at the news that Rasputin had been killed.
Hmm.
So apparently, it was a very private ceremony. Only the royal family and a few others attended. None of Rasputin's family were invited.
Okay, that was gonna be my next question. Like,
Yep.
what about his wife and kids?
They were not invited to the burial service, but they met up later with the royal family later in the day at a home of like a friend of the royal families. So they didn't even go into the palace as far as I know. They just met at a friend's house.
Wow.
I don't know. Yeah. So a few months later, after the Tsar abdicated the throne, people who were looking for where Rasputin was buried because they felt that his grave would become a rallying point for supporters of the old regime. And a former guard to the palace showed them where he was buried. So they dug up his body, and the interim government decided to bring the coffin to St. Petersburg. Once it was there, they decided to destroy his remains. They burned his body and then scattered his ashes, and I don't know where they scattered them. Yeah,
Why?
because they wanted his initial burial site to be unknown to anybody because they didn't want people not only supporting him, but they also didn't want people that would be supportive of the Romanov version of Russia because they thought that he would be like a representation of that or something. I don't know why they thought that, but
Seems
whatever.
a little extreme.
Yeah, seems a bit much, huh?
Yeah.
So now, where his body was initially buried, there is like a little memorial there for him. And of course, people bring like little talismans and pictures of the Virgin Mary. And there is like a picture of him and like his family and whatnot on because they've got like a cross there and whatnot. They said that he apparently had like escaped from being tortured and entered like the courtyard, and that's where he was probably shot. Either way, he
Oh,
was shot like at the Yusupov Palace, but people even will bring roses like to the courtyard, which there's like a playground there now. But
wow.
people will bring roses because they're like, oh, the legend goes, again, I'm not sure if this is 100% true, but he apparently ran out of a particular door into the courtyard, and that's where they shot him.
Hmm.
So I don't know, like I said, don't know if it was inside, outside, but people will bring roses to the place where he was said to be shot at the
Huh.
palace, because now it's like a museum or something, I believe.
Okay.
So Rasputin's daughter, Maria, was the only of his children to survive, I believe, the revolution.
Hmm.
But she ended up migrating to France after the revolution and then to the US, where she became a dancer and then a lion tamer for a circus.
Wow.
I know. It's
A
pretty cool.
lion tamer.
A lion
Wow.
tamer. But yeah, so that's the story of Rasputin. It's not as whimsical and mystical as I had initially thought it would be, but because honestly, it was more sad than anything. Because the initial story of Felix Yuspov's story, I thought that's what happened, and then I actually started looking into it, and I'm like, oh, he's full of shit. Don't bite me. And that's clearly not what happened to him.
Huh.
But
Interesting.
so about his penis. So
I don't know that I would actually enjoy anything that starts with so about his penis.
you shouldn't anyway. So about his penis. So the initial story where one of them cut off his penis. So the story goes that apparently a servant ended up like putting it in a jar,
Oh, I don't
supposedly.
I don't like that either.
Oh no, it gets better. So
Does it?
it does. So supposedly a servant put his penis in a jar, and then it was sold around like the noble women of the area after his death. It was sold as like a fertility charm. And supposedly people would like, I don't know what they did with them, but they would like take pieces off of the penis, the quote unquote
Oh,
penis, because remember, it wasn't actually cut off. So
right.
supposedly they would take pieces from the penis.
Oh no.
So then later years, Maria found out and she demanded it be given to her because she's like, that is my father's penis.
Oh
I'm going to take
no.
it.
I wouldn't do that.
See, I wouldn't either. I'd be like, you know what?
You can keep it.
You can keep it. So I guess after Maria had passed, I guess they did like a test on the supposed penis and found out that it was a sea cucumber. So,
So
see,
how
so I'm not even done yet. Dude, I'm
oh
not even done
no.
yet.
Oh no. I don't
So then years later, someone that deals with like oddities or something has a little museum or something of that nature and comes across supposedly Rasputin's real penis.
oh no.
So now it's on display in a museum and it is claimed to be Rasputin's penis. However, might I remind you, it wasn't actually cut off. So
Right?
I've seen a picture of this penis 1,000 fucking times. It's sad how many times and how many pictures of this penis I have looked at.
Why have you?
Because I wanted to know if it was his penis. So upon further examination of it,
I'm currently looking at sea cucumbers.
well, they are quite phallic shaped,
I mean, they are.
but I don't know how anyone would mistaken that for a dick.
I don't either.
I don't know, man.
Some of them are red and have little sprouts growing out of them.
Exactly. So if someone thought that a sea cucumber was his penis, they probably I'm like, have you ever seen a penis? Like, I don't know. I don't know, man. So
Oh
upon
my.
further examination of the quote unquote real penis of Rasputin, some people say that it's most likely a bovine penis.
Oh shit.
So I've looked at it so much. Because I was like examining it. I'm like, how? It's definitely not a human's penis. I will show you because when we upload this video to YouTube, I don't want to be showing a dick and get like demonetized. Because I'm not gonna take I'm not gonna take the time to blur out the image. I'm not doing it. I'll just show you afterward and it'll be fine.
Oh
It's a
my
cow's
goodness.
dick.
Oh my gosh.
Well, excuse me, bull. Whatever. It's definitely not a person's penis. It's not. So if you go to this museum, I don't remember
Milk
what it's
doesn't
called.
come from that.
No, no, it doesn't. So if by some chance you end up at the museum with Rasputin's penis, just know it's not his penis.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I'll show you a picture. It's
Okay.
it's not a human's penis.
Okay.
It's not. Plus, it looks like it's been circumcised, and I can nearly guarantee you that Rasputin was not circumcised.
Right.
Because the time and his religion, he most likely was not. But of course,
Okay.
I don't know. I am not an expert in Rasputin's penis.
Apparently you are because you looked at a million pictures of it.
I wanted to know for sure. But yeah, it's definitely not his penis. It's not a person's penis.
Oh my
So,
gosh.
so it's not quite as whimsical and interesting as I thought it was because all the rumors of him being like this crazy, drunken, sexy wizard are not true.
No, he's scary.
Yeah. So yes, that is the story of Rasputin
And his penis.
and his not penis. So,
Oh goodness.
I know. Sorry that it took a real weird left turn at the end.
Yeah, it did.
But I thought when I initially started, I knew the story, the Yusupov story of his dick being cut off. So I'm like, that's hilarious. I'm going to show Paige a picture of Rasputin's dick in a jar. It's not his dick in a jar.
Oh my
It's
gosh.
a bull dick in a jar. I'll show you.
Goodness.
Yes. So, thank you for joining us this week. And thank you so much for everybody that's listening. My mother told me that we don't thank people enough the last time that I talked to her. So you know what,
Yeah,
from me, thank you everybody that listens to us and continues listening to us and thinks that we're funny enough to listen to or interesting enough to listen to.
To continue to listen to.
That too.
So and I meant to do this at the beginning of the episode, but I forgot. So I'm gonna do it now. So last week's episode, which was the Icebox murders, we talked about how Charles was obsessed with ham radio. And Peyton thought it was like radio DJ. And
Well, I thought it was like a radio. When you say radio, I think of like in a car.
I quickly dismissed that as false. And I said it was like, CB radio, but not really CB radio. Turns out it is like a CB radio, except it's on a different frequency from like what the truckers use. One of our friends had messaged Peyton and said, "Hey, yeah, so it is because my dad is interested in it." And Peyton's like, "Oh, tell the dumbass who was the one that said it wasn't like CB radio."
I
So she messaged me and was like, "Yeah, hey, so this is what it is." So thank you very much for informing me since I wasn't interested enough to look more.
I believe my exact words were definitely tell the dismissive ass that I podcast with.
Yeah. So thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you for letting us know
Yes.
that is actually like a CB radio.
Yes. So, if you'd like to keep up with the podcast and with our socials, you can follow us on Facebook at
2K away.
You can follow us on Instagram at 2K Away Podcast. And we do have a Gmail where you can contact us and and you can say hi, suggest something. It is 2kawaypodcast@gmail.com. Every time you type the word 2, it is actually the number 2.
And we have a YouTube channel.
Yes. And we have a YouTube channel. It is 2K Away Podcast, again with the number 2. And since we still haven't launched our Patreon, I know I keep saying it. I am going to launch it because we're going to discuss after this. Whatever. Long story. But if you'd like to support us in another way, what you can do is you can leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. I believe some of the other podcasts do have places where you can leave like rate and review, but Apple Podcasts for sure, because this is what helps people find us and helps us get higher in the charts so people know about us. So, thank you for joining us this week for my little history lesson.
And I didn't fall asleep, although I did yawn a lot.
Fuck you. So, thank you for joining us, and we will see you all next week.
Bye.
Bye.